Sarah thought she was raised by the perfect family. But one DNA test shattered that illusion forever. What happened next, live on Dr. Phil's stage, would expose a secret buried for 30 years. And no one in that studio was ready for the truth. The air inside the studio was electric, a mix of lights, nerves, and a heavy silence that comes before a storm. Cameras zoomed in. The audience leaned forward. At center stage sat Sarah, her hands trembling as she held a folder marked confidential DNA results. Her lips quivered, eyes darting between the two people she'd called mom and dad all her life. Her mother, Linda, couldn't look at her. Her father sat frozen, his jaw tight, his fingers gripping the armrest as though the truth itself might rip him from the chair. Dr. Phil's voice broke the tension, calm, measured, but carrying the weight of what was about to unfold. "Sarah," he said softly, "are you ready to know the truth?" She nodded barely. The sound of paper rustling echoed like thunder. When Dr. Phill opened the envelope, time seemed to stop. Every heartbeat in the room synced with hers. You could almost feel her world split in two before the words were even spoken. He glanced down at the paper, then back up at her. "These results show that the man you've known as your father is not your biological parent." The crowd gasped. Linda covered her mouth. Sarah's eyes went wide, but no tears came. Not yet. It was as if her brain refused to believe what her ears had heard. Her father shifted in his chair, eyes glassy, whispering something that microphones couldn't catch. Dr. Phill turned to Linda. "There's something you've never told your daughter, isn't there?" Linda's shoulders sagged. Her voice cracked. "Yes." The moment those words escaped, Sarah's world tilted. Years of family dinners, birthdays, and bedtime stories suddenly felt counterfeit. All the moments that built her life, all the laughter, the memories, were now under suspicion. Her heart pounded in her chest. She whispered, "Who is my real father?" Linda didn't answer. She just looked down, tears spilling on her lap. Dr. Phill closed the folder and set it gently on the table. "Sarah," he said, "you're not alone in this. But the truth, it's deeper than you think." The screen behind them flickered to life, displaying a blurred image, a man's face. The caption read, "DNA match, 99.7 paternity probability." Sarah blinked, confused. The audience went silent again. "This man," Dr. Phill continued, "has agreed to come forward, but there's more you need to hear before he walks on this stage." Sarah's breathing quickened. "Who is he?" she asked. Dr. Phill leaned forward, lowering his voice. "He's been searching for answers, too. But before we meet him, we need to go back to where this story began." The lights dimmed slightly. A slow zoom on Sarah's stunned face. Her fingers still clutched the folder, like proof that her life, as she knew it, was slipping through her hands. Because it wasn't just a piece of paper. It was the line between the family she thought she had and the truth that was about to destroy it. Would you want to know the truth if it meant losing everything you believed in? As Dr. Phill looked into the camera, he said the words that froze millions watching at home. "There's something your parents never told you." Fade to black. 3 weeks before that studio moment, before the cameras, the envelope, the confession, Sarah's life looked picture perfect. A quiet suburban street, fresh-cut lawns, a 2-story house with white shutters, and a porch swing that creaked when the wind blew. It was the kind of neighborhood where people waved just to prove everything was fine. And for years, Sarah believed it was. Every Sunday, her family gathered for dinner. Pot roast, mashed potatoes, the same jokes told 100 times. Her dad, Mark, was the dependable type. He fixed things, paid bills on time, never missed a birthday. Her mom, Linda, was soft-spoken, gentle, the emotional anchor of the home. They looked like the kind of parents you'd want, the kind you'd trust. But lately, something felt off. Small things. When Sarah looked at old photos, her mom's smile seemed forced. When she'd asked her father about her childhood, he'd changed the subject. And every time Sarah brought up anything about DNA tests, the kind trending on social media, her mother would flinch. It started as a joke. A friend at work, Emily, had done one of those ancestry kits. She found out she was 20 Scandinavian and posted about it online. Everyone laughed. So, during lunch, Emily turned to Sarah and said, "You should try it too. Maybe you'll find something wild." Sarah laughed. "Trust me, my family's boring. We've lived in the same state for 3 generations." But the idea stuck in her head, like a spark waiting for oxygen. That night, she sat on her bed scrolling through the DNA Kit website. The tagline read, "Discover where you really come from." The words hit her harder than they should have. Where you really come from. She hesitated for a moment, then ordered the kit. $99. Free shipping. Just for fun. Days later, a small white box arrived in the mail. Simple, harmless, but it would become the trigger that detonated her world. She followed the instructions, filled the tube with saliva, sealed it, and dropped it off at the mailbox. Then she forgot about it, or at least she tried to. 2 weeks passed. Work, dinner, life as usual, but something inside her had started to itch, a quiet curiosity that wouldn't shut up. On a gray Thursday morning, an email appeared on her phone. "Your results are ready." Her heart skipped. She opened it quickly, expecting to see a list of countries or maybe some distant cousins. But what she saw instead made her freeze. The top of the page read, "Parent/child match found." Below it, a name she didn't recognize. Daniel Ross. She stared at it for a long time, her pulse pounding. Maybe it was a glitch. Maybe parent/child didn't mean what she thought. But it did. She reloaded the page. Same result. Same name. The air felt heavy. Her hands were cold. She whispered, "Who is that?" Her brain raced through possibilities. An error, a relative, a fluke. But the truth sat quietly in the corner of her mind, refusing to move. That night, she showed the results to her mother. "Mom," she said softly, "something weird came up on my test." Linda's fork froze halfway to her mouth. "What do you mean?" "There's a man listed as a parent match. His name's Daniel Ross. Do we know him?" Her mother's face went pale. So pale, Sarah thought she might faint. "No," she whispered. "That's impossible." "Then why does it say parent?" Linda's eyes filled with tears before she could hide them. "Sarah, you shouldn't believe everything you see online. Those tests make mistakes all the time." Sarah frowned. "But it says 99.7%. Enough." Linda snapped. It was sharp, unfamiliar. The kind of voice Sarah had never heard from her mother. The room fell silent. Her father stared at his plate, not saying a word. That silence said everything. Sarah's world tilted. The walls of her so-called perfect home suddenly felt paper thin. Later that night, she couldn't sleep. The name Daniel Ross looped in her head like a song she couldn't turn off. She typed it into Google. Hundreds of results. Nothing that fit, until she clicked on a Facebook profile. The man was older. Salt and pepper hair. Blue eyes. A kind smile. And one photo stopped her cold. A close-up of his face, eyes shining in the sunlight. Her eyes. She leaned closer to the screen. Same curve of the eyelids. Same small dimple on the left cheek when he smiled. Her breath hitched. Could it be? Suddenly, every strange glance from her mother, every unspoken moment at dinner, every time her father turned away from her childhood questions, it all lined up like pieces of a puzzle she hadn't wanted to solve. She shut her laptop, heart racing. But deep down, she already knew. The next morning, Sarah called the DNA company. She wanted to confirm, to hear it from someone official. The representative on the other end was polite, professional, detached. "Yes, ma'am. Based on the markers, the match indicates the 99.7 probability that Daniel Ross is your biological parent." Her voice trembled. "Are you sure?" "Yes, ma'am. It's not a mistake." When she hung up, the house felt foreign. Even the family photos on the wall seemed to mock her. Smiling faces, perfect poses, a history built on something that wasn't real. She whispered to herself, "Who am I?" And for the first time, she didn't have an answer. As she sat in silence, her phone buzzed, a notification from the DNA site. A message request. "Daniel Ross, I think we need to talk." The words blurred as tears filled her eyes. She wasn't ready, but the truth was coming anyway. Because once you open the door to the past, it never shuts quietly. Would you want to know the truth if it meant rewriting your entire life? Fade to black. Sarah stared at the message for hours. "I think we need to talk." 5 simple words. but they felt heavier than her entire past. She didn't reply right away. Days passed. Her phone sat on a nightstand like a ticking bomb. Every time it buzzed, her chest tightened. Finally, one sleepless night, she wrote back. "Who are you?" He responded within minutes. "I'm not sure, but your name came up on my test, and I think we might be connected in a way I can't explain yet." That word, connected, echoed through her like a ghost. They began messaging every night. Carefully at first, like two people walking barefoot through broken glass. She asked questions. He answered gently, and little by little, pieces of the truth began to form. Daniel told her he'd taken a DNA test after his sister urged him to see what kind of health risks run in the family. He never expected a daughter to appear in the results. He'd never even known Linda existed. At least, that's what he said. At first, Sarah wanted to believe him, but something in his tone, that mix of guilt and awe, told her there was more beneath the surface. One night, she asked, "Do you know my mother's name?" He paused. "Linda." The message hit her like a hammer. She dropped the phone on her lap. Her throat tightened. He knew. He knew her mother. She typed back quickly. "How would you know her?" No reply. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Then an hour. Finally, a message appeared. "I met her a long time ago, before you were born." The room spun. Her mother had lied, not just about the DNA, but about her entire history. Sarah felt betrayed, furious, and oddly curious. Because even through the shock, there was a strange pull, a quiet voice inside whispering, "This man might be the missing half of your story." Days later, Daniel asked if they could talk by video call. Sarah agreed, her hands trembling as she set up her laptop. When the call connected, the screen flickered, and there he was. He looked older than in his photos. His eyes kind but haunted. "Hi, Sarah," he said softly. His voice cracked a little. "I've been waiting 30 years to meet you, even though I didn't know it." Sarah froze. Tears welled in her eyes before she could stop them. "Are you saying?" He nodded. "I think I'm her father." The words hung in the air, heavy and unbelievable. She wanted to scream, deny it, close the laptop, and pretend this was some cruel mistake. But his face, the shape of his smile, the tilt of his head, it all mirrored her own. That night, she couldn't sleep. Her thoughts spiraled between anger and longing. If Daniel was her real father, what did that make Mark? The man who'd raised her, protected her, paid her college tuition. Was he now just a placeholder? Every memory felt rewritten. Every "I love you, Dad," now carried an invisible question mark. The next morning, Sarah's phone rang. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Hello, Sarah? This is Dr. Phil's producer." Her heart stopped. "Wait, what?" "We saw your story through the DNA network. Daniel reached out to us. He said he wants to meet, but he'd only do it in a safe environment. We'd like to help you both find the truth together." Sarah's mouth went dry. She didn't know whether to laugh or hang up. A TV show? Her family's secrets, broadcast to the world? But then again, what choice did she have? Her parents refused to talk. Daniel wanted answers. And deep down, Sarah needed closure. That night, she sat at the kitchen table with her parents. Her hands trembled as she spoke. "Mom, Dad, I've been talking to him." Linda's fork clattered onto the plate. "To who?" "Daniel Ross." Her father's face hardened instantly. "You did what?" "I had to. I deserve to know who I am." Linda began to cry, quiet, broken sobs. Mark stood up, his voice shaking with restrained rage. "Sarah, that man is nothing to you. I'm your father." She whispered, "Then why does the DNA say otherwise?" The silence that followed was unbearable. Her father's lips pressed into a thin line. "If you walk into that studio, don't expect to come back to this house." It was a threat, but beneath it, a deeper fear. He knew the truth would destroy everything. Sarah left the table, tears streaming down her face. She packed a bag, booked her flight, and 2 days later, found herself walking through the cold, echoing halls of a Los Angeles studio. Makeup artists brushed powder on her face. Producers whispered instructions, but all she could hear was the pounding of her heart. Behind the curtain, she saw Daniel for the first time in person. He smiled nervously. She wanted to hate him, but something inside her softened. Ready? A producer asked. Sarah took a deep breath. No, but I'm going out there anyway. As she stepped onto the stage, the lights hit her eyes. Dr. Phil's voice echoed, calm but commanding. Sarah, Daniel, today we'll find out if DNA tells the truth or if family is something deeper. The crowd fell silent. The test results were sealed in a folder on the table. And somewhere backstage, Linda waited, trembling, with a secret she swore she'd take to her grave. Because the truth was about to go live, and it wouldn't just change Sarah's life. It would expose the lie that built her family. Would you face the truth, even if it meant losing the people you love most? Fade to black. The air backstage was thick, not with sound but with silence. Linda sat alone in the green room, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Outside, she could hear muffled applause as the audience reacted to Sarah and Daniel on stage. But in her chest, there was only one sound, the steady, merciless beating of her heart. A producer approached her. Mrs. Miller, Dr. Phil's ready for you. Linda nodded slowly. Her reflection in the mirror barely looked human. Makeup cracking beneath sweat, eyes hollow from 30 years of lies. She whispered to herself, "You promised this would stay buried." And then she stood. The door opened. Lights swallowed her. The stage looked smaller from the outside, but under those cameras, it felt infinite. Every step she took echoed louder than her breath. Dr. Phil's tone was gentle but deliberate. Linda, thank you for joining us. The audience clapped politely, unaware they were seconds away from hearing a confession that would fracture 3 lives. Sarah sat stiffly, her jaw clenched, a tear-streaked face that looked both furious and fragile. Daniel, across from her, avoided Linda's eyes, guilt swimming behind his calm demeanor. Linda, Dr. Phill began, your daughter just found out that Mark is not her biological father. And Daniel says he remembers meeting you many years ago. Is there something you'd like to tell Sarah? For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Her lips parted, but no words came. Finally, her voice cracked. Yes. The studio went silent. Linda's eyes met Sarah's, the same green eyes that had stared up at her crib 30 years ago, trusting her completely. I never meant for you to find out this way, she said softly. I never meant for any of this to happen. Sarah's voice trembled. Then why? Why did you lie to me my whole life? Linda swallowed hard. Because I was scared. Dr. Phill leaned forward slightly. Scared of what? Linda's eyes glistened. Of losing everything. She took a deep breath. When I was 23, I was married to your father, Mark. He was kind, steady, but we were young, and our marriage was struggling. He was working long hours, and I felt invisible. Sarah's expression softened, just barely. One summer, I went to visit my sister in Oklahoma. That's where I met Daniel. He was building a deck for her house. He was funny, charming, and he actually listened to me. We spent one night together. Just one. I told myself it didn't mean anything. Daniel's face fell. He looked down, jaw tight. Linda continued. When I came home, I found out I was pregnant. Mark never questioned it. He was so happy, and I told myself if I never said a word, the truth would die with me. Sarah shook her head. You could have told me. I couldn't. Linda's voice cracked. Every time I looked at you, I saw both of them. The man I loved and the mistake I made. I was terrified that if I told you, you'd hate me. That your father would leave. That I'd ruin all of it. Dr. Phill nodded slowly. But secrets have a way of coming out, don't they? Linda nodded, tears streaming down her face. They always do. For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the quiet hum of cameras capturing what no family should ever have to relive. Sarah wiped her cheeks, her voice trembling between anger and heartbreak. You didn't just lie, Mom. You made me live someone else's story. Linda reached out instinctively, but Sarah pulled back. I know, Linda whispered, and I'll never forgive myself for that. Dr. Phill gave her a moment, then said gently, Linda, the truth is painful, but you're not the only one living with the consequences of it. He turned to Daniel. Daniel, did you know Linda was pregnant? Daniel shook his head, his voice rough. No, sir. I had no idea. If I had, I would have been there. I never would have let her go through that alone. The audience murmured softly. A few people wiped. Dr. Phill spoke calmly. We can't rewrite the past, but maybe, just maybe, we can start understanding it. Linda turned to Sarah, trembling. You have every right to hate me. I lied because I thought I was protecting you. But the truth is, I was protecting myself. Sarah's voice broke. All those times I asked about my childhood, all the weird silences. You were hiding this. Linda nodded. Yes. Sarah exhaled, the weight of 30 years crashing down. Then stop hiding now. Tell me everything. Linda hesitated, then whispered, There's one more thing you don't know. The camera zoomed in. Dr. Phill leaned forward. What is it, Linda? Her lips trembled. Mark knows. He's known since the day you were born. The audience gasped. Sarah froze. What? He saw the hospital papers, Linda said through tears. He knew the dates didn't line up, but he loved you so much, he decided to raise you anyway. We promised never to tell you. Sarah covered her mouth, sobbing. Dr. Phil's voice softened. So Mark's been living with this truth for 30 years, silently carrying it to protect both of you. Linda nodded, broken. He's the real hero in all of this. Sarah's tears turned to quiet awe. Her whole life, she thought her father had been distant, cold, even. But now she understood. He wasn't cold. He was hurt. And still, he chose love. The camera panned slowly across their faces. A mother consumed by guilt, a daughter torn between rage and compassion, a biological father weighed down by lost time. Dr. Phil's closing words pierced through the silence. Sometimes, the truth doesn't destroy families. It simply shows you who's been holding it together. Sarah looked up, voice shaking. Can I talk to him? Dr. Phill nodded. He's waiting backstage. The studio lights dimmed slightly as Mark stepped out from behind the curtain. Eyes red, hands trembling. The moment he appeared, the audience fell completely silent. Because now, the final truth was walking toward them. Would you forgive someone who lied to protect your happiness? Or would you walk away forever? Fade to black. The lights dimmed as Mark walked onto the stage. Every step echoed, slow, deliberate, the sound of 30 years of silence breaking. The audience didn't clap this time. No one dared. The air felt sacred, heavy with everything unsaid. Sarah turned her head toward him. Her eyes were red, her voice small. Dad. Mark's lips quivered at that word. He took a deep breath, then forced a small smile, the same one he'd given her on her first day of school, the same smile that had always made her feel safe. Hi, kiddo, he said softly. It was the gentlest greeting imaginable, but it cracked something open in the entire room. Dr. Phill leaned forward slightly, voice even. Mark, thank you for being here. We just learned you've known the truth for decades. Tell us why you decided to stay silent. Mark sat down slowly, his eyes never leaving his daughter's. Because she's my little girl. Always has been. Always will be. He paused. His hands fidgeted in his lap. When I found out Linda was pregnant and the math didn't add up, I knew. But when they put Sarah in my arms, all that disappeared. I didn't see someone else's child. I saw mine. Sarah covered her mouth, trembling. I thought about telling her as she got older. Mark continued, voice breaking. But every time I tried, she'd look at me and say, I love you, Dad. And I couldn't take that from her. Not after all I'd lost. Dr. Phill asked gently, lost? Mark's eyes filled with tears. My own father walked out on me when I was 7. I swore I'd never do that to my kid, no matter what. For a few seconds, no one spoke. You could feel the weight of those words ripple through the crowd. Sarah reached for a tissue, but didn't wipe her tears. She just stared at him, as if seeing her father for the first time, the man behind the silence. Linda's sobs filled the air. Mark, I'm so sorry. You shouldn't have had to carry this alone. Mark turned to her. You think I did this for you? No, Linda. I did it for her. His finger pointed to Sarah, not in blame, but in love. The kind of love that endures betrayal, shame, and time. Dr. Phill looked down at the envelope still resting on the table. The studio lights reflected off the golden seal. This, he said, is the DNA confirmation. But I think we all know what it's going to say. Still, procedure mattered. Closure mattered. He broke the seal and pulled out the paper slowly, carefully, like it was sacred. Every eye in the room locked on him. He cleared his throat. Based on the results, Daniel Ross is Sarah's biological father. A collective gasp from the audience. Then silence. Sarah inhaled sharply. Tears flowed freely now. She didn't scream, didn't faint. She just whispered, "I knew it." Daniel closed his eyes, relief and grief mixing together like rain on glass. Mark leaned back in his chair, hands over his face. You could almost hear the sound of his heart cracking. Not because of surprise, but because truth always hurts, even when you expect it. Dr. Phill placed the paper gently on the table. Sometimes the truth doesn't set you free right away. Sometimes it breaks you first. Sarah turned toward Daniel. Her lips trembled. "So what now?" Daniel looked at her, really looked at her. "Now, I make up for lost time, if you'll let me." The audience sniffled. Cameras zoomed in as Sarah hesitated, the battle between anger and compassion raging in her eyes. She finally said, "You weren't there when I learned to ride a bike, or when I broke my arm, or when I graduated. You missed everything." "I know," Daniel said quietly, "and I'll never get those years back. But if you give me a chance, I'll be here for the next ones." Her voice cracked. "I don't even know who you are." "You will," he said, eyes wet. "If you want to." For a long time, neither moved. Then, almost imperceptibly, Sarah reached across the table and took his hand. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was something deeper, permission to try. The audience erupted in applause. Not the loud kind, but the emotional kind. The kind that feels like a collective sigh of relief. Dr. Phill gave them space, then turned to Mark. "You've been quiet, Mark. How do you feel right now?" Mark exhaled slowly. "Like I've lost something and gained something at the same time." He looked at Daniel, then back at Sarah. "He might be your father by blood, but that doesn't change what we've built. You're my daughter, Sarah. Nothing, no test, can erase that." Sarah sobbed openly now. She stood, walked toward him, and wrapped her arms around his shoulders. The crowd rose to their feet. Linda covered her face, crying. Even Daniel, sitting across from them, smiled softly, tears glistening under the lights. It wasn't about winning anymore. It was about surviving the truth. Dr. Phill stood, his voice steady and reflective. "What we've witnessed today isn't about scandal. It's about the strength of love, even when it's been built on broken pieces." Sarah turned to him and whispered, "Now I finally know who I am, but I've lost who I was." Dr. Phill nodded slowly. "That's what truth does, Sarah. It destroys illusions, so something real can grow in their place." The audience stayed standing, some clapping, some crying. The camera zoomed in on Sarah's tear-streaked face, framed by both men who claimed her, one by blood, one by choice. That single image captured everything this story was about. Identity, pain, and forgiveness fighting to coexist on the same stage. As the lights began to fade, Dr. Phil's final line echoed like a prayer. In the end, family isn't just who shares your dinner, it's who shows up when the truth finally comes out. The credits didn't roll yet. There was still more to say. But for now, the truth had been spoken. Would you rather live with a beautiful lie or a painful truth that finally sets you free? Fade to black. The studio lights are long gone now. No cameras, no audience, no applause. Just real life, quiet, unfiltered, and still carrying the echoes of what was revealed that day. A year has passed since Sarah learned the truth, and somehow, her world feels both smaller and bigger. She lives in a small apartment downtown now, her own space. No family portraits, just a few photos taped to the fridge. Her mother, her two fathers, and a new picture taken on a park bench where the three of them sat together, awkward but smiling. It's not perfect, but it's real. Every Sunday, they meet for dinner. No producers, no scripts. Just three people trying to rebuild something out of the ruins of what used to be. Mark, the man who raised her, still calls every morning before work. "You doing okay, kiddo?" he'll ask, pretending it's casual. But she can always hear the emotion hiding under his voice. He still signs every text with "Love, Dad," and she never corrects him, because he still is. Daniel, her biological father, visits often. They walk Cooper his old golden retriever, down the same trail he used to take when he was trying to process the shock of one afternoon. As they sit on a park bench, Daniel tells her something that makes her pause. "I used to dream about a daughter," he says softly. "Didn't even know why. Just this feeling that someone out there had my laugh. Turns out, I was right." She smiles faintly. "You lost 30 years. He nods. "Maybe, but I still got today." Back home, her mother has changed too. Linda's gray hair shows more now, but there's a lightness in her face that Sarah hasn't seen in years. She's been in therapy, working through guilt, shame, and self-forgiveness. Sometimes they sit on the porch together, sipping tea in the quiet of early evening. And one day, Linda finally says it. "You know, I thought the truth would destroy us. But lying was the thing that really did." Sarah looks at her, tears welling up. "I know, Mom. I think we all paid for it." They share a silence that doesn't hurt anymore. It's a silence filled with understanding, the kind that comes after the storm. There's still tension, of course. Mark and Daniel don't talk much, except when Sarah's around. But there's mutual respect now. They've both realized something powerful. Love isn't a competition. It's endurance. And when they all sat together for Thanksgiving, Mark carving the turkey, Daniel pouring the wine, Linda setting the table, it didn't feel like betrayal anymore. It felt like redemption. Broken pieces, reshaped into something new. Sarah began volunteering at a community center soon after the show aired. She helps people find their biological families, guiding them through the emotional minefield she once walked alone. She never mentions the cameras or the applause. She just listens, because sometimes the kindest thing you can give someone is a safe place to tell the truth. One evening, she receives a letter in the mail. Handwritten. The return address makes her heart tighten. Mark. Inside, it's simple. Just a few lines. "Sarah, I may not be the one who gave you life, but you're the reason I learned what love really means. I'm proud of you. Not for the show, not for how strong you've been, but for how you kept your heart open when it would have been easier to close it. Love always, Dad." Tears slip down her cheeks as she folds the letter back carefully. She places it in a box labeled the day everything changed. Inside that box are the remnants of her old life. The test results, the show ID badge, a few photos. But now, there's something else. New pictures, letters, and a small Polaroid of her and both of her fathers smiling awkwardly after dinner. Her voiceover fades in softly, steady, reflective, honest. "I used to think truth was something that either saved you or broke you. But now I know it's both. It destroys the version of your life built on lies, and it gives you a chance to build something real in its place." The camera slowly pans out of her apartment window, catching the glow of city lights. Maybe forgiveness isn't a single moment. Maybe it's 1,000 small choices to love anyway, even when it hurts. In the final shot, Sarah walks out the door, box in hand, heading to her car. She places in the back seat and drives toward the horizon, not running anymore, but moving forward. As her car disappears into the distance, the narrator, steady, calm, compassionate, delivers the closing reflection. The same kind of moral weight Dr. Phill style storytelling ends with, "The truth doesn't always set you free right away. Sometimes it humbles you. Sometimes it breaks you. But eventually, it rebuilds you." And maybe that's what family really is. Not the people who share your DNA, but the ones who stay when the truth finally comes out. The music swells. The screen fades to black. 1 year later, Sarah and both of her fathers continue to rebuild their relationship. Her mother, Linda, now volunteers at a support group for women carrying long-buried secrets. Soft piano fades under the final line. Sometimes the hardest truths lead to the most honest lives. Fade to black. If this story moved you, share it with someone who's searching for truth or forgiveness. Because sometimes one honest story can remind someone else they're not alone. Subscribe for more true stories that prove even broken families can find their way back to love.